The jar of honey sitting in your kitchen cupboard right now may not be honey at all. It could be a carefully engineered sugar syrup designed in a laboratory, specifically built to fool every standard test that exists. And the people selling it to you know exactly what they're doing. In 2024, the Honey Authenticity Network UK, a body of independent experts and beekeepers, tested non-EU blended honeys purchased directly from British supermarket shelves. 24 out of 25 samples failed DNA authenticity tests. That's 96%. Nearly every single one. And here is the part that should make you angry. Those jars were not sitting in some dodgy market stall. They were in the biggest supermarket chains in the country, with branding you recognize at prices you trust. Today we are exposing 12 honey brands and products available in the UK that raise serious concerns. Brands hiding behind warm imagery, bee logos, and the word natural, while potentially selling you something that has almost nothing to do with real honey. And then we are going to reveal 6 brands that are genuinely worth your money, where what is on the label actually matches what is in the jar. Because here is what matters. Real honey, the kind made by bees from flower nectar, contains enzymes, antioxidants, and antimicrobial compounds that researchers have spent decades studying for their health benefits. Fake honey, the kind bulked out with rice syrup, sugar beet syrup, or corn syrup, contains none of that. It is essentially liquid sugar dressed up in a jar with a bumblebee on it. And according to Fortune magazine reporting in 2024, these bioengineered syrups have now become so sophisticated that they are specifically designed to pass standard chemical tests. The fraud has evolved faster than the regulation. This is not a small problem. The UK imports approximately 62 Ishuas tons of honey every year. Only 14% of the honey we consume here is actually produced on British soil. The rest arrives from abroad, much of it from China, which accounts for tens of thousands of tons annually, and where honey adulteration is, according to investigators, a known and widespread risk. And the fraudsters are not operating in the shadows. A video that circulated widely in 2024 claimed to show representatives from Chinese honey companies openly offering UK-grade adulterated honey at the SIAL trade fair in Paris, one of the world's biggest food industry events, in plain sight. At a professional trade show, that alone should shock you. So how did we get here, and which specific brands should you be worried about right now? Let us start at the very beginning. The first brand worth examining is one almost every British household knows: Rouse Honey. The golden hexagonal label, the friendly bee, the tagline rooted in an Oxfordshire story that stretches back to the 1930s. Rouse is the #1 honey brand in the UK by sales, generating enormous shelf presence across every major supermarket. And the brand does produce some genuinely single-origin products, including certain British and Manuka lines that carry verifiable provenance. But here is where things start to unravel. The vast majority of Rouse's best-selling products, the ones you almost certainly have in your home, carry the label blend of non-EU honeys. That phrase is legal. It is permitted by food standards. But what it means in practice is that the honey inside comes from a mixture of countries, which does not have to be declared, and which consumer advocates and industry watchdogs have repeatedly flagged as one of the highest risk categories for adulteration. Consumer reviews on Trustpilot have described Rouse's standard blended honey as tasting like pure sugar syrup. Independent researchers note that when non-EU blended honeys were tested in the 2024 Honey Authenticity Network study, the failure rate was overwhelming. Rouse's squeezy clear honey, one of the nation's most purchased products, falls squarely into this high-risk blended category. Rouse disputes these characterizations and says it conducts regular supplier checks. But the company has never released the specific independent lab results for its standard blended range, and without transparency, consumers have no way to verify the claims being made on that familiar golden jar. That alone should make people think twice. But Rouse is far from alone, and the next brand raises even more troubling questions. Gale's Honey is one of the most recognizable names in British grocery. Founded in 1919, it spent decades as the UK's biggest honey manufacturer before passing through the hands of Rowntree Mackintosh, Nestlé, and eventually landing with Premier Foods, one of the UK's largest food conglomerates. And that corporate journey tells you something important. Because when a brand passes from artisan hands to multinational ownership, the commercial pressure changes fundamentally. The question shifts from how do we make the best honey to how do we maximize volume at the lowest cost. Gale's standard clear honey is sourced from blended origins. The labeling offers limited transparency about where the honey comes from. There is no published independent third-party testing result for consumers to check. And with the brand now sitting inside a sprawling corporate portfolio, alongside Mr. Kipling, Bisto, and OXO, the heritage story on the front of the label feels increasingly disconnected from what is actually happening in the supply chain. Consumer watchdogs consistently list blended origin products from large corporate brands as the highest risk for adulteration. Gale's fits every single one of those criteria. The nostalgic branding is doing a lot of heavy lifting here, and that is a concern that this investigation cannot overlook. But what comes next involves something even more cynical, because the following product is marketed specifically as a health food at premium prices. Let us talk about the broader Manuka honey market in the UK, because this is where the fraud gets truly breathtaking. Manuka honey comes from the nectar of the Manuka bush, a plant that grows in New Zealand. It commands premium prices because research has found it contains unusually high levels of methyl glyoxal, a compound with documented antimicrobial properties. A 250-gram jar can cost anywhere between $20 and $60 in British shops. Some jars cost even more, and because of that premium price, it is one of the most counterfeited food products on the planet. Here is a statistic that should stop you cold. New Zealand produces approximately 1,700 tons of genuine Manuka honey per year. But the amount of honey being sold globally with the word Manuka on the label is estimated at more than 10 times that figure. The maths simply does not work. Millions of people paying premium prices for something that cannot possibly exist in the volume being sold. In 2023, the unique Manuka Factor Honey Association conducted scientific testing across UK and US retailers. They tested 46 Manuka honey brands produced outside of New Zealand. Every single one failed, all 46. They did not meet the key chemical markers that define genuine Manuka honey according to New Zealand's own export standards. One of the most widely discussed brands in this context is Wetter Spoon, which sells its Manuka products using its own grading system called K-Factor. K-Factor 16, for example, is defined as honey that is wholly or mostly from Manuka plants. K-Factor 12 is defined as having a significant amount from Manuka. Notice what is missing from both definitions. There is no measurement of methyl glyoxal. There is no measurement of the non-peroxide activity that gives genuine Manuka honey its documented properties. Wetherspoon's grading system, consumer advocates argue, looks like it measures potency, but actually measures nothing that matters scientifically. The company disputes this characterization, but the absence of UMF or MGO certification is a factual reality that any consumer can verify for themselves on the label. That raises serious questions, and we are not done with the Manuka category yet, because what comes next is even more brazen. If you're finding this investigation valuable, take a second to like the video and subscribe. We expose misleading food products and industry secrets every single week, and we are just getting started. Walk into any branch of Holland & Barrett, Boots, or even Amazon UK, and you will find dozens of honey products with active or raw Manuka, on the label but with no UMF certification number and no verified MGO rating from an accredited laboratory. The packaging is often beautifully designed. The marketing copy talks about bees, nature, and wellness, and the price is positioned to feel premium but accessible, usually somewhere around $12 to $18. These are, according to experts in the field, some of the most misleading products on the British market. Without UMF certification, there is no independent guarantee of the methyl glyoxal level inside the jar. Without an MGO rating from an accredited lab, there is nothing stopping a manufacturer from putting any amber-colored honey in a jar and calling it Manuka style or active honey, using language that is carefully designed to imply properties it has not been verified to contain. Industry experts are unambiguous. If a jar of Manuka honey does not carry a UMF number on the front label, from a licensee registered with the Unique Manuka Factor Honey Association, you have no independent assurance of what you are buying. And many products on UK shelves, particularly at the more accessible price points, do not carry this certification at all. This is not a minor technicality. People are spending hard-earned money on what they believe to be a therapeutic-grade product based on marketing language engineered to create that impression without actually making verifiable scientific claims. That is, at best, deeply misleading. But the fake Manuka scandal is only the most dramatic corner of a much bigger picture. Because for the vast majority of UK consumers, the danger does not come from $30 wellness jars. It comes from something far more ordinary. Supermarket-owned brand honey. The blended budget honey sold under supermarket-owned labels, Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, Morrison's, and the discounters Aldi and Lidl, represents the bulk of honey purchased in the United Kingdom. It sits in the $1 to $2 price range. It is the honey that goes into millions of cups of tea every morning, onto millions of slices of toast, into millions of children's lunch boxes. And in 2024, Tesco found itself in an uncomfortable position when Richmond Council tested its own brand honey using nuclear magnetic resonance technology and flagged the result as suspicious. Tesco withdrew the product while the matter was investigated. Scientists subsequently disputed whether the specific test used was entirely reliable, and the product was ultimately found to be compliant. But the very fact that the withdrawal happened, the fact that testing flagged a concern in the first place, is revealing. Because what that incident illustrated is this: the testing methods available to regulators and councils are still evolving. Honey fraudsters are using laboratory analysis to engineer their syrups specifically to pass the tests that exist. It is a scientific arms race, and consumers are the ones caught in the middle. Both Aldi and Lidl source their blended honeys from non-EU suppliers. Their products carry none of the single origin guarantees that would allow consumers any meaningful transparency. At 69p or 79p for a squeezy bottle, there is simply no economic model by which those products could contain genuine, unaltered honey at the volume being sold, because the cost of real honey from verified sources is structurally incompatible with that price point. Independent beekeepers have made this argument repeatedly and publicly, and it has never been convincingly refuted. The British Retail Consortium, representing the major supermarkets, insists its members conduct regular supplier checks. But those checks are performed by the same supply chains that the Honey Authenticity Network tested and found almost entirely suspicious. Now, let us address something that makes this scandal even more serious. Beyond the question of fraud, there is a health dimension to this story that has not received nearly enough attention. When honey is adulterated with rice syrup, corn syrup, or sugar beet syrup, the result is functionally equivalent to eating refined sugar. The beneficial enzymes found in raw honey, including glucose oxidase, the enzyme responsible for its natural antimicrobial properties, are entirely absent. When honey is also ultra-pasteurized, which involves heating it above 70 degrees Celsius, those enzymes are destroyed even in genuine honey. Most supermarket honey in the UK is ultra-pasteurized. This is done for commercial reasons to prevent crystallization on shelves and extend shelf life. But according to researchers at the UK's Ferroscience Institute, the pasteurization process that makes supermarket honey look clear and appealing is the same process that strips it of the properties that make honey biologically distinct from sugar. In other words, millions of people in this country are buying a product they believe to be a natural, healthful food and consuming what is, in many cases, heated, blended, potentially adulterated sugar syrup at prices that suggest they are paying for something far better. And Fortune magazine reporting from 2024 went further, noting that the bioengineered syrups now being used by fraudsters are metabolized in ways that can increase risk of conditions including obesity, fatty liver disease, and insulin resistance, the same metabolic risks associated with high fructose corn syrup consumption. People who specifically choose honey over other sweeteners because they believe it to be a healthier choice are being actively deceived. This is where the brand loses all credibility. But the issue does not stop with individual brands. It goes all the way up to the supply chain. Here is something the industry does not want you to think about too carefully. According to an investigation reported by the European Commission, honey blended and processed in the United Kingdom and then re-exported to Europe carried a 100% suspicion rate in 2021 and 2022 testing. Every single re-exported sample. The report described a systematic use of forged traceability documents, the deliberate removal of pollen to disguise geographical origin, and laboratory manipulation of sugar profiles to evade detection before products reached import inspections. That is not the behavior of a few rogue operators. That is an industrial system. And it is operating right here in supply chains feeding products onto British supermarket shelves. The World Beekeeping Awards, one of the highest profile recognition events in the global industry, took the extraordinary step in 2025 of canceling its Best Honey Award entirely, because the judges could no longer be confident of distinguishing genuine honey from sophisticated imposters. When an awards body concludes that the fraud has become so advanced that winners cannot be reliably identified, that tells you everything about the scale of the problem. And yet Trading Standards, the body in the UK responsible for enforcing food labeling law, has repeatedly faced criticism for failing to take meaningful action. Black Bee Honey, one of the UK's most respected authentic honey producers, has publicly stated that Trading Standards spent more time policing their use of the words unpasteurized and raw on labels than investigating the documented fraud surrounding imported blended honeys. That juxtaposition is almost beyond satire. Now you have heard the bad news, and there is plenty more in the industry that consumers deserve to know. But you also deserve to know where to go instead, because there are brands in the UK that are doing this properly with genuine transparency, real traceability, and honey that is actually honey. Let us start with Black Bee Honey. Black Bee Honey was founded by two friends, Paul and Chris, who left corporate life and built something genuinely different. Their model is based entirely on a collective of British beekeepers, real people, named operations, traceable locations. Every product is single origin. Every jar carries information that connects the honey inside to a specific place, a specific season, a specific beekeeper. Black Bee holds B Corp certification, one of the most rigorous standards in the food industry, independently verified to confirm ethical sourcing, environmental accountability, and supply chain transparency. The company publicly campaigns for stricter honey regulation and independent testing, and has been vocal in exposing the fraud taking place in the category around them. Their honey is raw, unpasteurized, and unblended. It crystallizes naturally, which is, importantly, one of the hallmarks of genuine honey and a sign of the enzymes and natural sugars that processed honey loses. And it is priced fairly, not cheaply, because genuine British honey from verified beekeepers cannot be produced at 75 pence a jar. The people charging 75 pence have told you everything you need to know about what is in that jar. This is a brand that deserves your trust. And the next one has a story that goes even further. The London Honey Company is one of the most decorated artisan honey producers in the United Kingdom, founded by Steve Benbow, who began with a single beehive on the rooftop of his council flat near Tower Bridge. That origin story, which sounds almost too good to be true, is entirely real. Today, the London Honey Company holds a royal warrant of appointment from His Majesty King Charles III, one of the most scrutinized and prestigious endorsements available to a food producer in Britain. Their range is raw, unpasteurized, single origin, and traceable. Their British blossom honey is harvested from their own beehives and from verified British producers. Their London honey line is gathered from rooftop hives across the capital, with the specific foraging areas documented for each batch. The company also actively champions British beekeeping as an industry, publicly arguing against the dominance of imported blended honey in UK retail. They are not neutral observers in the category. They are advocates. And their advocacy is backed by a product range that independent reviewers, food critics, and Great Taste Award judges have consistently recognized as exceptional. If you are buying honey in the UK and you want certainty, this is as close to certainty as the category offers. Bermondsey Street Bees is a sustainable urban beekeeping operation founded in 2007. They maintain hives across London and Essex, and their products have accumulated multiple Great Taste Awards, the independent blind tasting standard run by the Guild of Fine Food, which is one of the most credible quality benchmarks in British food retail. Their honey is raw, minimally processed, and reflects the specific forage sources of wherever the bees have been working. Wildflower meadows in Essex, rewilded industrial land in East London, the margins of Hackney Marshes. That specificity is not marketing language. It is the biological reality of how honey works. The flavor, the pollen count, the chemical composition of authentic single-origin honey is inseparable from the place it came from. And Bermondsey Street Bees can tell you exactly where that place is. This is what transparency looks like in a product that has been systematically stripped of it across the mass market. For those specifically interested in Manuka honey, Comvita is the benchmark. Comvita is New Zealand's largest Manuka honey producer, with over 18 years of continuous membership with the unique Manuka Factor Honey Association. Every product they sell carries a verified UMF rating, independently tested, independently audited, independently certified. Their supply chain uses QR codes for full traceability from hive to shelf. And the company has invested in blockchain tracking specifically to combat the sophisticated counterfeiting that plagues the Manuka category. Comvita is not cheap. A 250-gram jar of Comvita UMF 15 Plus will cost you considerably more than the jars of active honey on the shelf beside it. But the price reflects something real. Independent laboratory verification of the methyl glyoxal content, the leptospirin marker, and the dihydroxyacetone level that together confirm the product's authenticity as genuine Manuka honey from New Zealand's certified hives. When you buy Comvita with a UMF certification number on the front label, you are buying something that has been verified to be what it says it is. That cannot be said for many of the other Manuka products on British shelves. Little Over Apiaries is a British producer that consistently earns praise from consumer advocates for one simple reason: absolute commitment to transparency. Their summer honey is cold extracted and cold filtered, techniques that preserve the natural enzymes, pollen, and beneficial compounds that pasteurization destroys. It is sourced from rural sites across the UK during peak honey flow seasons. The supply chain is traceable. The product is unblended. And unlike many brands that use the word natural as decoration, Little Over can actually document what that means. You will find their honey in Waitrose. It is one of the few genuinely authentic options available in major supermarket retail. Proof that honest honey can reach the mainstream shelf if the will to do so is there. Finally, for those who want raw British honey and are willing to invest in quality, Honeybee & Co. represents one of the most interesting operations in the UK market. This family-run business blends British beekeeping heritage, including heather honey from the Yorkshire moors, with traceable international partnerships, including a sixth-generation Transylvanian beekeeping family. Their products have been featured in 3 consecutive Vogue Summer Hot List editions, hold SALSA certification from a British supplier, and carry full single-origin traceability documentation. This is a premium product, but it is premium because of what is actually in the jar, not because of a marketing budget and a clever label. Real honey from verified sources, with every claim backed by documentation that a consumer can actually check. So let us take a step back and look at what this investigation has revealed. Tens of thousands of tons of honey flowing into the United Kingdom every year. A testing system that fraudsters are deliberately outpacing. A regulatory environment where the labeling rules are loose enough to describe genuine deception as technically legal. And a retail landscape where the vast majority of the most popular, most purchased, most trusted honey products in the country cannot be verified as genuine by any independent standard available to consumers. The lesson is uncomfortable but clear. The cheaper the honey, the less likely it is to be honey. Products labeled blend of non-EU honeys at budget prices carry the highest risk. Mass-market Manuka honey without UMF certification is a product built on implication rather than proof. And ultra-pasteurized, blended honey from unnamed origins, however familiar the brand name on the outside, is a product designed to look like something it may not be. Real honey crystallizes. Real honey comes from a named place. Real honey costs more than sugar syrup. If the product you are holding does not meet those basic tests, you deserve to ask why. The good news is this. British beekeepers are still producing extraordinary honey from verified, traceable hives across England, Scotland, and Wales. The authentic product exists. It is available. And choosing it does not just protect your own health and your household budget from deception. It supports the beekeepers whose hives also pollinate the crops that feed the country. That is a choice worth making. In our next investigation, we will be turning the same lens on another category where trusted labels are hiding uncomfortable truths, one that sits in almost every medicine cabinet in the United Kingdom. You will not want to miss it.